Okay, let's take a look at the basic terms of geometry. A point has no dimension. It is one of the undefined terms in geometry. When we name a point, we're going to use a capital letter. For example, the A here. A line has one dimension. A line will extend forever in both directions. A line is represented by a line with double arrowheads. When we name a line, we can use two ways. First, we can use 2 points that are on the line with an arrow on both ends above it, or we can use the lowercase letter at the end of the line. In this case, its example is line L. It takes only 2 points to make a line. So this particular line could be named AB, BA, or AC, or CA. The next undefined term in geometry would be the plane. The plane is a two-dimensional figure. It extends forever in both directions. It's represented by a parallelogram. When we name the plane, we can use 3 non-collinear points. For example, in this picture, we could call it plane A, B, C. Or we could use a script letter, a cursive letter, which is a capital letter, but it's not attached to a point. For example, in this case would be plane S. Remember, it only takes 3 points to make a plane. You could have more. If 2 points lie on a plane, then a line that goes through those 2 points is on that plane also. Okay, next we have the intersection of 2 lines. Which would be a point. The intersection of, we could call it, would be the union, or the intersection is an upside down U of 2 lines is a point. The intersection of 2 planes would be a line. You can use that upside down U to write for intersection. Intersection of 2 planes is a line. Here's a counterexample. It's a non-example that refutes or disproves a hypothesis or proposition or theorem. For example, the term point, we give an example, point P, and a counterexample would be a line or a plane. Those are the 3 undefined terms in geometry. The next term is a segment, which is a piece of a line. This segment, when you name it, uses capital letters, one for each point, the end points, and there are no arrows above the line. If you write the segment above the line, you're talking about the figure. If you leave the segment line off, you're talking about the measure of the segment. Okay, next we have the word ray, and a ray has one endpoint and a line that goes forever in one direction, as it's shown here. The endpoint L is a dot, and then the line goes over the point M and beyond. So we're going to name it using the endpoint and another point with the arrow above it. In this case, we could name it Ray LM or Ray LM. Even if the M comes first, the endpoint is read first. Next we have opposite rays. Opposite rays come from one endpoint and extend in opposite directions. So this could be a line with 3 points. The point between would be the endpoint of one of the rays, ray BA, and that point B could also be the opposite ray BC. The midpoint is a point in the middle of a line segment. It's exactly in the middle so that the segment is divided into 2 equal parts, and we label that with 2 small tick marks on each segment. This midpoint, we have 2 congruent, collinear segments. A segment bisector, a line, ray, or segment that intersects at the midpoint. So here we have a line or a ray and a segment which cuts the line cuts the segment exactly at the middle. So you still see the 2 congruent marks, and this segment bisector intersects at a midpoint. Next we have parallel lines. Parallel lines are denoted with 2 parallel lines. These are lines that never intersect. When we label parallel lines, we use parallel lines. Since they're lines, we're going to put the arrows on them. And we can use either a V or a whole triangle on the line to show that those 2 are related. They're parallel. They never intersect. Parallel planes are planes that never intersect. For example, the floor and the ceiling of a room would be parallel planes. Collinear means points on the same line. In pre-AP, we have collinear refers to points on the same line, and points on the same line refer to collinear. We use this double arrow for definitions. Coplanar refers to points, rays, or lines on the same plane. Coplanar points, lines, are points and lines in the same plane. Congruent with this symbol, like an equal sign with a squiggly line above it. That means equal length, size, or measure. And they talk about congruent, they're referring to a picture of 2 things that are the same length, size, or measure. For example, a segment. Congruent segment means that it has equal length. Congruent angles means that you have equal measure of angles. We can write congruency statements for figures. For example, congruency statement for 2 segments would be KL with the segment without the line without the arrow is congruent to MN. An equality statement looks very similar, but it doesn't have the top on it. So KL, the measure of KL, will equal the measure of MN. For angles, we can write angle without the M. Angle ACD is congruent to angle DEF. If we want an equality statement, we would put the little m in front of it because we're talking about the measure of an angle. In this case, angle ACD equals the measure of angle DEF.